their own healing journey, what advice would you give them?
The first thing would be to not repress or deny how they're feeling and, really feel the emotions that have to come along with grief. I had amazing talking therapy, which definitely helped me a lot. So if people have access to that professionally, then great. If not, then, if you've got close friends that you can talk to, then talking it out does help. But I've really learned that there's a limit to how much that helps, and that some sort of physical therapy is really helpful as part of it. Those would be the basics, I would say. Time in nature has been so healing for me. Some form of creative outlet, whether it's making or beholding. So you don't have to be good at art. If you draw, a picture of how you're feeling emotionally or a sketch of your loved one, it doesn't have to be good. You get benefits from doing that. It's an creative outlet for your grief. That's probably the second level. And, the third level to me is if you've got any inclination to receive signs, or just be open to, a white feather landing at your doorstep, or a bird coming to visit you, or something that means something to you, then that can bring a lot of comfort and guidance and joy.
And you also assert that things like being in nature, creativity, honing into our intuition increase the probability of us receiving these signs.
Mm-hmm. Well, receiving and being able to interpret in a way that's meaningful for you.
Gut instinct. In the book, you talk about how strengthening one's gut health can have an impact on gut instinct.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that to me.
So the body is basically the physical foundation for, all of your senses to be able to flourish, to your higher mental faculties to be able to flourish, and ultimately for, whatever spiritual experience you have of life to be able to be at its fullest and best as well. So taking care of the physical foundations is really important. And, we could talk about all the usual things like sleep and diet and exercise, mindfulness, stress management. But I want to really focus strongly on the gut-brain axis, because a lot of new research has come up since I wrote The Source. So it's actually, we know a lot about this bidirectional communication between the brain and the gut. It's actually a three-way system, which is the brain, the gut itself, the gut neurons, and the gut microbiome, which is trillions of bacteria and fungi and, organisms that are basically determining the health of our entire system, because they're connected to our immune system, to our skin, to our oral microbiome, and the brain. So the way that the most direct access you have to your brain is through your gut. The gut is the most direct way that you can influence your brain, and you can do that through exercise, obviously diet, supplementation, even like meditation and art and music therapy have a beneficial effect on your gut microbiome as well, which has a knock-on effect on the neurons and the brain. And they communicate with each other many ways, mostly through the vagus nerve.
What's the vagus nerve?
The vagus nerve is a cranial nerve, so it comes from your skull. It's Latin for wandering because it's the longest nerve that goes through your body. So there's two, the right and the left, and they go all the way from your cranium.
What's my cranium?
Your cranium is the bone around your brain.
Yeah.
So inside that, down your neck, they go through your diaphragm and to your intestine.
I'll put a photo up on screen for everybody who wants to see where their vagus nerve is.
Also other nerves, so the nerves that innervate the gut organs, they're called afferent intestinal nerves. They're also involved in this communication. Then there's hormones, and there's cytokine messages, which are chemical messages that aren't hormonal. Your immune system actually also produces neurotransmitters, and there are immune cells in your brain as well. So those are all the ways that we know currently that the brain and the gut communicate with each other.
And so what does this mean in terms of my gut health and ways to influence my brain? Does it mean that I need to be really big on my prebiotics and my probiotics to make sure my gut's intact? And if I do that, then my intuition will be sharper.
Mm-hmm. So that's true. But I always like people to understand what's behind that, not just mindlessly take prebiotics and probiotics. So what we're trying to do is reduce inflammation throughout the system. And so basically, because the brain is a small organ in our entire system, but it uses up at least 20% of our energy. So it's very vulnerable to what we call oxidative stress or free radicals. So every time like there's any turnover of cells in our brain or our body, basically as we live the wear and tear of daily life, we release free radicals, which are molecules that can damage cells, particularly nerve cells. And because the brain has such high turnover of energy, it's particularly vulnerable to free radical attack. So reducing inflammation and putting things that are neuroprotective around it, like certain vitamins and minerals, is really important. And the hippocampus part of the brain, which it has high cell turnover because it's to do with memory, laying down memories, and obviously well into adulthood, we're still doing that. That's also very vulnerable to free radical damage. And that's why we can get memory and cognitive impairments and dementias as we get older. So the modern Western diet causes something called dysbiosis, which is that your gut isn't in a good state. Mm-hmm. And that creates a cascade of inflammation and releases molecules, some of which can cross the blood-brain barrier and therefore cause inflammation in the brain. So we want to minimize that as much as possible and put in as many protective and beneficial factors as possible. If we're doing that, the system's in what we call homeostasis, which is good balance. It's kind of starting to take care of itself. It's got all the nutrients that it needs. It's hydrated, it's oxygenated. That's when you've got extra resources to do the higher mental functions. And up until today, pretty much, I've described those as being able to solve complex problems, being able to think flexibly, creatively, override your biases. But now I'm proposing that there's more than that we can do. There's accessing levels of intuition that we didn't know we had. Very much through the same mechanism of how I described trauma being stored in the body. Hidden wisdom is also stored in the body. It's not just in your brain. And therefore, the same therapies like beholding and making art, humming, drumming, storytelling, dancing, yoga, just movement can help us to access that intuition that isn't just in our brain and our mind and take us to a next level of intuition that's not just cerebral, it's physical.
You use the word dark retreats. I've never heard that phrase before.
So dark retreats come from a Tibetan religion or philosophy, but it's seen throughout the ancient civilizations. So the ancient Greeks and Romans used to bury people actually for days, and then they would come out and be like the seers and the mystics of that community. But there's most research available in dark retreats because it's still happening today.
What is a dark retreat?
A dark retreat is, have you heard of silent retreat, silent meditation?
Yeah. Yeah, my girlfriend went on one.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing she would do. So basically you can go away for a few days to a few weeks and you're just in silence and you're meditating and doing breath work most of the time. In a dark retreat, you are in like pitch black for... you can go and do it for a few hours or a weekend, but it's meant to be in sevens. So 7 to 49 days. The monks do 49 days. If, as a person who's interested spiritually, you wanted to do it quite seriously, you would go for 7 days. And you would be in a room or a cave that's got double walls, so it's completely dark. And the reason for doing this is that not all of us can have a near-death experience, right? So this is a way of emulating, it's the closest way of emulating that for anyone like you or I to get access to the benefits of a near-death experience, which I've outlined them all in the book. So in a dark retreat, at first you sleep a lot because it's dark, you're releasing a lot of melatonin from your pineal gland. So you fall asleep in darkness, you awake in darkness, and basically that kind of makes you feel more sleepy, so you sleep a lot. After a couple of days, you start to see like pulsations of light. It might be like little shooting stars or kind of just like little sparks here and there. And then eventually it feels like the walls are dimly alight. So in complete darkness, you start to see light. Obviously, there's an element of like hallucinating at this point. And so after 3, 4, 5 days, you will actually start to see animals, real or sort of fantastical. And eventually people see like deities or beings like people do in near-death experiences. And when people come out of these retreats, they experience many of the same benefits, like, you know, a real sort of like joy for life, less fear of death, more compassion for other people, less fear of failing. So, you know, taking more healthy risks. So it's a way basically of emulating a near-death experience.
And it therefore convinces you that there's more than you can see in your day-to-day life, and therefore that expands your mind in a way that's beneficial.
Yeah, it's another example of an altered state of consciousness. You can also get altered states of consciousness through conscious connected or holotropic breath work and through the use of psychedelic plants as well.
How do we know that it's not just a changing of our neurological state or the chemicals in our brain that are causing us to interpret things differently with our senses? Because, you know, we've all, many of us have experienced having some kind of stimulant or psychedelic or some compound in a rave or a festival that's made us see the world differently for a moment. And science would say that's just the neurochemicals in our brain doing different things, which are changing our perception. They wouldn't say necessarily that it's a different realm or a different dimension.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it is that. So as a neuropharmacologist, I, you know, understand as much as the research says about it's mostly, like I said, in the body, in the brain with psychedelics, it's mostly 5-HT or serotonin 2A receptors. And there's a level of hyperconnectivity within the brain, particularly, as I said, in the visual cortex here, which allows people to see things that they don't normally see. And I think the way to apply that in your life is that it's a glimpse into what's possible. Once you've experienced that, it could either be that you find other natural ways of experiencing that. So there's a paper I can forward to you that shows that certain forms of conscious connected breath work produce the same effect as a moderate dose of psilocybin.
Which is magic mushrooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this research came out after psilocybin was banned, and practitioners thought, well, what are other ways that we can help people to achieve these altered states of consciousness? And personally, I believe that, you know, having like a completely like awe-inspiring experience in nature, or for me, like the ballet, particularly when I've been so lucky sometimes to sit in the wings and you just completely feel like you're part of it. I mean, I've literally had a spiritual experience sitting in the wings watching, actually it was one of my friends, the principal dancer, dancing, just so overwhelming. It's completely an altered state of consciousness. So there are other ways of accessing that. But I think it depends like why you want to and what it means to you. But at minimum, these sorts of things that I'm talking about are ways of understanding that there's more to life than what we know.
And how does that meaningfully change like the concept of what happiness is and contentment is and like living a good life is?
So what I think is really interesting is that we don't actually have to experience certain things ourselves. So there's a lot of research that shows that students from various different areas of expertise who simply learn about near-death experiences actually get some of the same benefits, and that these can last for over a year later. So understanding that when someone sees that there's something greater than us, when someone sees the interconnectedness of everything, when someone understands how small some of their problems are in the greater, you know, picture of things, helps people to be more compassionate, more grateful, kinder to others, less materialistic, is really interesting. And I think anything that we can do to help us, you know, free us from some of those chains that I think hold us down in the material world, particularly in the Western world, it's healthy for us physically, mentally, emotionally, But it also brings in this element of spirituality that I think is just so lacking in the world at the moment and could be so helpful. Because if we look back at the way that our ancestors used their senses and their intuition to interpret the land, like a cloud formation could mean that rain's coming, but it could also mean that your ancestors were talking to you. It just seems like such a beautiful way to live. And when we lived in Paleolithic times, we didn't have spare resources for having fun. But we adorned ourselves, we danced, we told stories, we made, cave art. So I think that just really reminds us that those things that are often seen as luxuries or frivolous, they're not at all. They're fundamentally important.
Believing in these things itself is good for us. Is that what you believe? You believe that believing in something transcendent, whether it's spiritual or religious, is actually just good for us. So that's reason enough to believe it.
It's reason enough to believe it, but I think it will naturally change what you do once you believe it. You're not going to live in the same way if you believe some fundamentally different things.
And the ways in which it changes what you believe are beneficial to you. So are you saying that is reason enough to believe it, like to want to believe it?
I think it's reason enough to try it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it causes people through human history to do awful things, right? To kill themselves, to strap bombs to themselves and do horrific things because they believe in something transcendent. It can also lead to like destructive behavior.
I mean, I don't think there's any evidence from near-death experiences that that's the case. I think I know what you're referring to is something that's, more fundamentally like religious and.
Because I was watching that, Jack told me to watch this Capturing Bin Laden documentary, so I was watching it last night, and these people flew themselves into buildings because they believe in, they were obviously radicalized in various ways, but they believed in going to a afterlife that would be better than this one, and that they were sacrificing themselves for the greater good. So I guess it's a side point that but the belief in transcendence itself in some regard isn't necessarily always going to guarantee our behaviors on this planet are productive.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, perhaps it's something more dogmatic, but I think you're absolutely right to raise that point. And I'm not trying to sit here and say, I found like the perfect solution and everyone should do this and it's all good. Like, I know that's not true. I'm not trying to say that at all. I think we should absolutely be questioning everything that I'm saying, and I will keep questioning the way that I'm living my life and keep trying to learn and grow.
I guess the point is just the belief in something transcendent. Does that make our lives necessarily better? I guess the answer is it can.
Yeah.
I'm really obsessed at the moment actually with this idea of purpose and meaning, because obviously we're living in a society that's more and more individualistic, and independence is kind of vogue. And because of a variety of things that have happened over the last 50, 60, 70 years, we have more independence. Women in particular have a lot more independence, which I think most people are very supportive of. Mm-hmm. We have more choice than ever before. And with choice comes independence. So I can choose now when I have a family, and maybe I couldn't choose before. Mm-hmm. And with choice and with freedom, I think some of our more short-term hedonistic desires and temptations take hold, and we end up sacrificing the tribe and shared responsibility and dependence. And a lot of our meaning came from like those things. So I feel to some degree that when we think about how we ladder up from like me to like my family, to my city, to my nation, and then maybe to my God, those layers have fallen away. And now for many of us, it's just me. And that's causing a crisis of meaning and purpose in life, because we're kind of unanchored.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on this? And do you think it's true that we're more unanchored than we've ever been? And how do you think we get back to that if we can relate to feeling a little bit lost and unanchored, and the sort of prevalence, in my view, of people having more and more midlife crises and turning to religion or spirituality or something?
Yeah, well, I actually called this in March 2020, and it's on record because I was on a podcast, and I said I foresee a huge mental health crisis, but we could choose for it to be a spiritual revolution. And so then obviously the rest of the pandemic happened, and then there was sort of a return to society, which I think people found really hard mentally as well. And at the same time, there was the cost of living crisis, the wealth gap, a new war, the crime rates, certainly in London, like just for my life experience, they had, significantly grown for reasons that we're all contributors to, but, it changes how safe you feel in society. And I'm a big fan of technology. Obviously, I'm a scientist, but it is ironic that we seem to be more disconnected than ever when in one way we're more connected than we've ever been before. Mm-hmm. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I think the way out of that is a return to ancient wisdom, to true connection, which I believe can coexist with being technologically connected and advanced. But yeah, I just think we've lost what it means to be human, which means, really being in touch with yourself and being part of a community and caring about something more than just your own life and your immediate, inner circle.
And what is true connection in your definition of the word? Because I guess there's false connection if there's true connection. Mm-hmm. So what's true connection? And what is false connection? Well,
I'll just go over, what I've said before, because it's about connection to yourself, to others, and, sort of the world or something greater. And, it's about something that's deep and not transactional. It's about something that's meaningful. It's about something that's altruistic. I think it's about contributing.